Hi, thank you so much for taking time to watch this child protection policy video that we're creating. My name is Julie Leeson and I'm the Director of Children's Ministry here at Providence, and I'm also the Child Protection Policy Administrator. So, if you haven't already read the policy, I'd ask that you pause the video right now and take a look, read through the policy, because I'm going to be highlighting things, but I can't possibly read, and you don't want me to read the whole thing to you. So it's important that you also have read through the policy, and then we can talk about highlights and some frequently asked questions and what we're going to do next. So go ahead and read it now. All right, so once you've read through, you'll see that at the beginning there's an overview. It is very important. It's our responsibility as a church to provide a safe environment for our youth here, as well as our volunteers. While we know the guidelines can't possibly address every situation, we want to prevent anything from happening here, and we're going to make sure that we're trying to be current with our information and that what is in the policy is carried out consistently. So it's so important, I can't stress that enough, that you do read everything in this policy so you know what you're being held accountable for as a volunteer. Our purpose is twofold. First of all, we want to make sure that we are protecting all children in our care from abuse, emotional, physical, spiritual, sexual abuse. While they're here, we want them to be treated as Jesus would treat them. Secondly, we want to guard our volunteers against being falsely accused of abusive behavior or even the appearance of misconduct. It's really important that our volunteers feel safe and are comfortable working with kids and are not putting themselves in situations where you could be falsely accused of something and it's your word against a child's word. We do not want that to be happening, so that's why we have our policy. Have your policy in front of you and turn to page 8. That's where our general guidelines are found. On page 8 to 14 are some crucial things that we all need to know. This is policies that pertain to what we're doing here. So the first section talks about relationships, and this is always really important. Whenever a ministry for minors is in session here, we need to have more than one person present with the children, and at least one of them has to be an adult. And this also can include hall monitors, but we also always plan for having 2 volunteers in each group with each group of kids. It's important that every volunteer wears their children's ministry name tag. This is really important for being able to identify who has been trained, who is on duty as a volunteer with children. Also, location and timing. For off-site events, if you're a volunteer with Boys Adventure, Girls Life, Student Ministries, you're going to be going off-site. These same guidelines apply when you're off-site for a church function. So it's important that you read through the location and timing section. So the reducing risk of one-on-one contact section is really important. 2-person rule. We always have 2 people on duty to be with children and caring for children. So one of them has to be an adult, one or both. If we have a younger person volunteering, they have to be 4 years older than the children they're working with. So we do encourage young people to volunteer, they just need to be 4 years older than the kids they're overseeing. Hall monitors are also roaming and available, and those are adults who are present. So they can be used if one-on-one contact, if you're worried you're going to be one-on-one. The biggest thing is we want to prevent any situation from happening where you're one-on-one and a false accusation comes about. We want to prevent ourselves from being put in an awkward situation. So we have this policy in place, and we should avoid one-on-one contact. If you need to have a private conversation, some of you might be working with teens or preteens, and it would be an appropriate time to have a one-on-one conversation with a youth who's struggling. That's okay as long as you are in the presence of others. So you need to be in a public place or in view of other people, not isolated in a closed room by yourself. All of our activities involving minors have an open door policy, so we do keep the doors open to the rooms, especially if there's not a window in the door has got to remain open. The next section is on physical contact, so make sure to read through this. We definitely want to be affectionate towards the kids here and show them Christ's love, and we want to do that in an appropriate way. And we need to be careful how our physical contact is interpreted. A child who may have experienced abuse will react differently to a hug or any physical touch than another child. Every child is different, and so we need to be really aware of how we're touching the children. We don't want to be misinterpreted as we try to hug or comfort a child. So a brief hug, an arm on the shoulder, an open pat on the back, a light touch to the forearm, those are appropriate ways that we're going to be showing affection to the children here. And we need to also think about age level. It is appropriate to have a toddler sit on your lap if they're struggling or crying because they just left mom or dad. It's not appropriate to have a school-aged child sitting on our lap. They need to be sitting on the floor next to us. If you have a situation where a child needs to be restrained, this is if they're hurting themselves or others and we have to hold them down or remove them from a room, we need to be careful to do that in a respectful way and immediately notify the parents and let myself know so that we can talk to the parents and figure out a way to better support this child with whatever is going on. So, turn the page to page 10. The restroom guidelines, always our favorite. The most asked about questions, who can take kids to the bathroom? How do we do that? This is where it can be a vulnerable situation. So, females, 7th grade and older, are allowed to take children to the bathroom, and we walk children in our classes once they're out of the nursery. They're 2.5. We walk them to the bathroom until they are in 2nd grade, finished with 2nd grade. And females take them to the bathroom, 7th grade and older, and we always take them to the women's restroom. Some of our 2nd grade boys don't like that and they want to run to the men's bathroom, but our policy says that through 2nd grade we walk them to the women's restroom in the lobby, the main restroom. The volunteer checks the bathroom, kids go in, and the volunteer remains in the doorway so you can see out of the bathroom and in. If a younger child does need assistance in the restroom, it's okay to go and assist them, but you have to leave the door open. People always ask about taking children to the bathroom, then you're leaving your other volunteer alone in the classroom. That is a tricky situation, which is why we have hall monitors and coaches on duty during our Sunday morning programming. I also encourage people, if you're going to take one child to the bathroom, bring a buddy so that you are also not alone with the child you're going with. Some people do ask about if your helper, if the helper in the classroom who would usually take them to the bathroom is a male, then I encourage that helper to go to another classroom and grab the helper from that room and switch spots. And the female helper then can take your children to the bathroom and you can fill in for them in their classroom. It kind of depends on the situation and who's on duty, but that's where, if you don't know, if you're not sure, ask. So the next section on page 10 is the transportation policy. And if you're going to be driving minors, it's important that we have an auto safety verification form for you and that you have read through this policy. Children need to ride in the back seat. At least 2 of the following procedures must be in place. 2 adults are present and in the front seat. At least 2 minors are in the back seat or are present in the vehicle, and the minors are in the back seat of the vehicles. Over to our discipline policy. Prevention is the best method, and if we're having students who are acting out, young children, we try to redirect them, try to distract them with other things, try to get them involved. Sometimes it just doesn't work and we're struggling, so we do ask or let parents know we're having trouble and work one-on-one with those situations. If you're struggling with a discipline issue in your classroom or with your group of kids, come see me and talk to us. We have plenty of people around who can help solve that situation, but please do also read the policy. Substitute teachers and helpers. If you are going to be gone, we always make sure that our substitutes are also trained. So make sure whoever you're asking to fill in for you has also been trained. The locked door policy All of our classrooms remain unlocked, and I also said that we leave the doors open. And our nursery, because of the unique vulnerability of infants and toddlers, there's additional guidelines for those in the nursery. Workers need to sign in and out. Diaper changes happen in the nursery for only females, 7th grade and older can change diapers, and there's a log. And there's some other specific information in there. So if you're a nursery worker, make sure to read that section and ask us if you have any questions. All right, on page 13, illness or injury. A first aid kit is available. If you don't know where it is, I will tell you. There are 2. There is one at the information center. It's when you go behind the information center, it's on the left side down below. That is just a small basic first aid kit if you need a Band-Aid or something. There's also a more significant first aid kit in the closet past the mailboxes and to the left, right before you go through those big doors into the Kids Quest area. There's a closet and there's a sign on the door. So that's where you can find a first aid kit. If you need to use the first aid kit for anything, if someone's injured, let me know. We fill out a accident or injury form, and we just notify the parents if something has occurred. The hall monitors are another really critical piece of keeping us safe here. We have 2 hall monitors on duty every time there are children's programming going on, and they roam and protect us by making sure there's nothing suspicious going on in the building and just keeping an eye out. So if you have questions or need somebody to be flagged or a parent to be found, you can flag a hall monitor as they're walking by, and they can assist you with that. They can also escort older children to the restroom, 3rd through 5th grade. If you're wondering, wanting to make sure just someone has an eye on the kids who have gone off to the bathroom, they can go by themselves. But hall monitors are great people to just keep an eye on the kids who've gone to the bathroom, make sure they come back. And the last thing in this section is our emergency procedures. In your name tags, there should be a card, in between your name. And this card has our emergency procedures on it. This is really helpful because we don't use these often and we might forget where to go. It's important that you read through and find out where you're serving and where you're supposed to go. In severe weather, there are 2 tunnels here at Providence. Make sure you know if you're in the nursery, you go in the tunnel that's under the worship center. If you're in the other classrooms, you go down the stairs that go up to the loft, you go down through there into a tunnel, or into the bathrooms that are by the cafeteria. So it's important that you read this information and figure out, where am I serving, where would I go? If you have questions, please ask. The next section in our child protection policy is a really important section. It's called Reporting Suspected Abuse, and you can find that on page 15 to 22 in the binder. If we have a gut feeling, or if we think that something is up, you suspect that someone has been abused, it's our duty to report it. And it's better to be safe than sorry. Maybe we're wrong, but maybe we can support that family in another way and have a conversation with them. Either way, if you think something is occurring, come and talk to me. There are steps on page 16. Steps for reporting suspected abuse. And if you suspect something is going on, immediately report it to me. And I will also let the lead pastor know. We have a form. It's a suspected abuse report that I'll have you fill out and get some information from you. But it's really important that within about 12 hours, we have a documentation of a suspected abuse. At that point, myself and the lead pastor will decide the next step, and there are follow-up procedures in detail that you won't have to worry about at that point, but as long as we get the information, it is so important that we report it. People often don't report it because they think, what if I'm wrong? But what if you're right and we didn't protect a child that's in our care? So please report it. Reported abuse doesn't cause harm to the family. It allows us to protect the family and find out what's going on with this youth. So In order to have a gut feeling, sometimes we don't even know what we're looking for. So there is a whole section starting on page 19 of symptoms of child abuse. And I'm not going to read every symptom, but it's really important that you do. I am going to read the first paragraph because I think this is critical. It says, note, children rarely exhibit just one sign that they are a victim of abuse. Some symptoms may also represent typical developmental changes or the after effect of trauma in their life other than abuse. Conversely, it is possible for abuse to be taking place without the appearance of noticeable symptoms because of the child's ability to mask or deny what would otherwise be confusing and painful to acknowledge. Generally, several signs observed over a period of time suggest that a child may be suffering from abuse. So some of these things are going to be typical behaviors, but if you see a pattern starting over time, definitely let us know. So infants and preschool children, what you might be looking for is regression, going back to bedwetting. That might be if mom has another baby, sometimes kids do this, but in conjunction with some of these other things, it's definitely a red flag. Changes in social behavior, signs of fear of someone familiar, perhaps, unexplained injuries. For school age, we might see a pattern of injuries as well, unusual fears, engaging in self-injury, acting out, lying, stealing, hoarding things, and oftentimes this is a change in their typical behavior. For adolescents, we might see eating disorders or sexually proactive behaviors, perfectionist behaviors, trying to please you in excess, experimentation with drugs and alcohol, self-abusive behavior, depression. Again, some of these things are typical teenage behaviors, but when we look at the bigger picture, we might see they are all red flags that something's going on with that youth. Neglect, appearing to be underfed, stealing food or hoarding food, having lack of supervision, unattended medical needs, consistent or frequent lack of hygiene. These are some things we might see as neglect. And then parental behaviors. If we see a parent not showing interest in a child or constantly putting them down, or speaking of that child in a romantic way, or again being hostile, overprotective, isolating, some of those things might be red flags that there is abuse happening. So things to report. Now on the next page, page 22, I want you to take a look at the myths of sexual abuse. Some of these are shocking, and we don't like to think that this is happening in our neighborhood, in our church, with our friends, but it is. It happens everywhere. So I want you to be aware of these specific facts. So if you could take a minute and read through page 22 and see what those facts are. Okay, so the last section in our binder is the forms, which are important because it's what we do next. If you have questions about the forms, there is page 24 has a whole description of each of the forms, and each of the forms is in here. So what do you do now? Make sure if you are volunteering, you have filled out the blue volunteer profile. If you're an adult, that is for 18 and older. If you're a minor and volunteering, there's, I believe it's a pink form, and it is volunteer profile for minors. Also, we need you to complete and sign the statement of agreement saying that you've gone through this information, you've watched this whole video, and to prove that you watched the whole video and made it through the whole thing, I ask that you put your initials at the top right corner of the page, and also put today's date, whatever date you're watching this, on the section that says that you've attended the training. This is your training. So I need you to put today's date on by where it says you've attended a training. If you're going to be driving minors, you need to fill out the auto safety verification form and submit to the church office a copy of your insurance and your driver's license. If you have further questions about any of these sections, or just have an uneasy feeling, or just don't know what to do in a situation, talk to us. There are always areas where we might not have told you exactly what you need to know, so please let us know and we'll work with you. And return all of that paperwork to my mailbox. If you have questions, you can call or email, and we'll flash my contact information. So thank you so much for watching this video, and I just appreciate having you on board and working with the youth here. Thank you.